Hey, Community Church. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to unpack a little bit more of the sermon series, Missing Piece, and in particular last Sunday's sermon on shame and how that ties into our missing piece. I'm Jackie, and I'm a counselor here at Community Church. And when I was first invited to kind of talk on this subject, I knew instantly that who I wanted to join with me, and that is my good friend Johnny Keene. Johnny has been in long-term recovery and also is the founder of the Remedy Project.
That's correct.
Right?
Right.
And so you want to tell us a little bit about the Remedy Project, Johnny?
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. We started Remedy about 12 years ago, and out of a need we had found within the recovery community, there was just a segment of the population that just couldn't afford resources and professional resources. So we created this ministry model where we kind of combine clinical practices with the gospel, and we made a commitment to never charge for services, which has been a really good model for us. It's really helped. So like I said, we're going into our 12th year, which blows my mind.
Well, in light of the sermon, what stood out to you?
Well, yes, and thank you for asking me to do this, because this is one of my favorite subjects.
Right.
Obviously, for being in recovery, shame, we feel like, is the catalyst for addiction. It's been said it's the cycle of shame, and it drives addiction. So I love this subject. I've dealt with it all my life, but it's a strong feeling that, like we talked about earlier, I think it's Satan's number one tool. He's the accuser.
That's right.
And that's his best way to accuse us. Tell us we're not enough. We're no good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we really are meant for union with the Lord.
Absolutely.
And so what better way to separate us is to keep us in isolation and hidden, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the dynamics, the powerful dynamics of shame, is that it pushes us into isolation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how do you see that? Just when Mark shared about the difference between guilt and shame, that's the part that really I just love reminding and hearing that.
I did too, and he did such a great job articulating it. That guilt is, I've done something wrong, and I need to work on that. Shame is I am wrong, and that I'm not enough. And I love the way he said that. But that's that message we keep telling ourselves, that I'm just not enough. And in addiction, that our loved ones always say, well, why don't you just stop?
Right.
And we go, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. And then we find out we can't, and that just adds to the shame piece. So it's a double whammy.
Yeah. It's stinking thinking too, right? Yeah. So for me, just even knowing that guilt is something that the Lord wants to use to bring us back to Him. Right. But then, like you said, to keep us isolated, the shame voices keep us covered up, right? Yeah,
and I think God's plan for healing is always going to be in community, healthy community. Right. And when we isolate, obviously we're not in community. We need the love from others, we need the correction from others, and the fellowship.
We do need love. And so you said, I am bad. So then what we would think would be the solution would be to be good, right? Just be good.
Right.
But actuality, that just leads to striving, right? A lot of striving.
And we white knuckle it. I'm going to be good. I'm
going to be good. And
it works for a little bit, but it's not sustainable.
Right. So really it is the love. That's what's going to draw us back.
Absolutely, yeah. And what God says about us, our identity in Him is what frees us. Right. Because He's enough, we're enough.
Yeah, that identity piece is huge.
It is. It is.
Yeah. So how does shame steal peace? Since it is called missing piece, how do you see it stealing peace for people?
Well, if there's a voice in your head constantly saying, you're no good, you're not enough, hide.
That's right.
Dan Allender talked about, shame is the fear of exposure. And if we're constantly running or spinning the plates going, I can't be found out,
Right.
there's no peace there.
No, absolutely.
And that's where we see this increase in anxiety disorders, depression, is all stemming out of that.
Right. Yeah. And so if your peace is in his presence and you're hiding, it just makes sense that there's not going to be peace, right?
Absolutely.
So it's more performance instead of being.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but that's scary. So
it is scary.
Yeah.
Especially when you leave it up to yourself to try to figure it out. We know if we're not good that we really don't have the answer.
Right. And so what is an option? What's a beginning step that we can take to help break through shame?
Yeah, first of all, I think we have to acknowledge the issue. We have to identify what the problem is. You know, I hate to keep going back to addiction, but we always say addiction's not an immoral situation, but we do a lot of immoral things when we use, and we do bad things, and we've got to identify that, and then we've got to start the healing process. And there's a lot of therapy out there that tries to make you feel better. You're really a good person. Well, no, we're not. Right. That's why we need a savior.
That's right.
And our focus needs to be on Christ. That's our only hope, and He's the one that can provide that perfect peace Mark was talking about Sunday.
I love that term that you use, white knuckle. We don't have to white knuckle it. We don't have to be alone, because shame and isolation go hand in hand. Right. And so maybe just to be vulnerable and find somebody safe to talk to.
Exactly.
And somebody who's going to love you where you're at, instead of look down on you and say, get it together, but then can kind of walk where you can just be fully seen and known, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is finding that safe community.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to be very discerning in creating your community. Just don't run out and start finding people. They've got to be safe.
Right.
That's going to hold your secrets. I don't want the secrets to keep you sick, but there needs to be some anonymity going on.
Right.
So,
well, they can just love you where you're at.
Absolutely.
It is really about love.
And no condemnation.
No condemnation.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you. I know you and I could talk for hours about shame.
Absolutely.
But we thank y'all for joining in. And if y'all want to unpack a little bit more, shame really is uncovered piece by piece. It's a whole process that we go through. And so you can reach out to Johnny at the Remedy Project, or I'm here at the church, and we'd love to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks, Johnny.
Thank you.